the MOZA R25 Ultra. What you gonna do when 25 Newton meters rains down on you from the top rope, brother? Your body won't be ready for the sheer torque, force, and detail that this wheelbase... It's not even plugged in. I was using this the entire time. What's up, everybody in Internet Land? David Adams here with Inside Sim Racing. So, the MOZA R25 Ultra. Full disclosure, this is not gonna be a traditional review like you're used to seeing on YouTube. There's tons of them out there and they're really good.
Really good.
So if you want to see one of those, go check them out and then come back and check this video out. Think of this one more of a, how does Dave feel about this wheelbase right now in the present time, and does he recommend it for others to try as well? And spoiler alert, I like it a lot. And I absolutely recommend one of these for every enthusiast that doesn't already have a high torque wheelbase. With all that said, I'm not even gonna begin to bore you with some cheesy unboxing video.
I am under the water. Please help me.
Instead, what I'm gonna do is talk about what the R25 Ultra is, what it isn't, who should buy one, and more importantly, who shouldn't buy one. Now, real quick, before I begin, we have to give a massive shout out to MOZA, who supplied this wheelbase for review. Without them, videos like this simply would not be possible. So when you're done checking out this video, be sure to hit up MOZA's Racing website and show them some love, and show some support to the companies that support Inside Sim Racing. Let's start out with what the MOZA R25 Ultra is. The R25 Ultra is the latest flagship wheelbase in the MOZA Racing lineup, and it features, as the namesake implies, 25 Newton meters of continuous torque. This is important to distinguish, as there are a fair amount of wheelbases out there that promote 12, 15, 18, or even 20 Newton meters of torque, but down at the bottom of their specs list, you'll see that it says that number is peak torque. What that basically means at a high level is that those wheelbases can hit 12, 15, or even 20 Newton meters of torque, but they can only hold it for a momentary period of time. And if you hold it for too long, they actually drop off to a lower number because they can only hold that torque for a certain amount of time, usually less than a second. For those who want me to talk nerdy to you, this wheelbase brings to the table a 21-bit magnetic encoder, which provides nearest makes no difference 2.1 million dynamic points of resolution. This bad boy also has an aluminum alloy housing and coupler construction, features 6 accessory inputs, and a 1000 Hertz USB polling rate. That totally remembered all that from heart, didn't have to read that from my notes at all. So what does all this mean for you, the consumer? Well, it basically means that this wheelbase is capable of delivering every single force you will ever experience in a real car, whether on track or off. Whether you're drifting, rally driving, racing, karting, and whether you're driving a GT car or a high downforce vintage car, this wheelbase will be able to deliver every single bit of information and communicate to you exactly what the vehicle is doing at all times. So the first question I typically get asked when talking about these types of wheelbases is, who the heck needs 25 Newton meters of torque anyway? And truth be told, no one. Well, in terms of need anyway, no one needs 25 Newton meters of torque. What 25 Newton meters of torque affords you is this beautiful thing called headroom. Or what that headroom means is that you could drive everything from a shifter cart to a vintage high downforce racing car, and you'll be able to get all of those true to life forces without ever having to worry about clipping or loss in detail. Now, this isn't just bigger number better. This is actual, factual, provable, and tangible feedback that lets you know exactly what the car is doing at any point in time, regardless of what you're driving. In fact, I want to go on a bit of a tangent here, so bear with me. Headroom is exceptionally important. Think of it as having powerful subwoofers in your home theater or a high horsepower engine on your street car. While your theater subwoofers can push 10, 20, 30, or even 100,000 watts of power, or your engine can dish out 3, 4, 500, or even 1,000 horsepower, when are you realistically going to use all of that? Nearly never. But that means you have this magical, quantifiable anomaly called headroom. And I'm all about headroom. Just like a person in their soundbar may need to go near max volume just to get a slight vibration in their chest during an explosion, my home theater with its 2518s, 815s, and 612s can shake half the neighborhood apart while barely moving the cones. Similarly, just like how your friend's CRV or your aunt's RAV4 needs to be damn near full throttle just to merge into fast-moving highway traffic, meanwhile, the car that you own can get up to 80 by just breathing on the loud pedal. That's headroom. Headroom, to put it simply, is that blissful amount of reserve energy and effort left over during day-to-day ordinary usage. That's what wheelbases like the R21, R25, and others in this ilk bring to the table. The ability to run at typical wheel torque figures without having to worry about clipping or loss of detail in that wheelbase. Instead of needing to run a 3, 5, or 8 Newton meter wheel at 80, 90, or 100%, sometimes even more, you can reach true-to-life in-car forces while having the FFB set to 10% or less and still have tons of feel and detail. Well, before we can answer that question, let's start off by answering the difficult question of who should not buy this wheelbase. And that basically boils down to 3 types of people. 1, if you already have an R16 or an R21 or similar wheelbase from the last few years, you're really not going to gain that much by upgrading to this wheelbase. Maybe skip it and wait for the next generation. In that same vein, person number 2, if you have a weaker wheelbase or an older wheelbase and you're on the fence about buying an R21 or an R25. Honestly, and I'm sorry about this, MOZA, just buy the R21. The R21 will give you every single thing that the R25 offers, and you'll save a few $100 in the process. In my opinion, unless you want the best of the best of the best and the bragging rights of having 25 Newton meters, save the couple $100 and go with the R21. Now that comfortably brings us over to the 3rd type of person who should not buy this wheelbase. People who are easily jump scared. This wheelbase is not for the weak of will, faint of heart, or people that cannot curl the amount of Newton meters that are on the box in pounds. Seriously, if you mistreat this wheelbase, it will flip you end over end and course correct you in a hurry. This is not a toy. With that out of the way, I can put my fun hat back on and we can talk about the cool stuff. Who should buy this wheelbase? Literally everybody else. And honestly, even if you fit into the first 3 categories, you should buy this wheelbase too. Why? Because it's epic. MOZA has absolutely knocked it out of the park once again. There is so much detail, you're able to just experience every single thing that the road is telling you to do. In all seriousness, if you're in the market for a high-end, high-torque wheelbase, the MOZA R25 Ultra should definitely be on your short list. And if you are thinking about buying a MOZA R25, I can think of the perfect place to get one. Check out simmotion.com and search for the MOZA R25 Ultra. There you'll find a link where you can pre-order one of these, or you can click the notify me when available button and we'll shoot you a really cool email letting you know when your wheelbase is ready to order. Honestly, setup is super easy.
Barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
Yeah, especially if you're coming from a MOZA wheelbase yourself like the R21. All you have to do is basically drop it in place of where you had your R21, reconnect your accessories, reconnect the power adapter, even though I'm sure that MOZA probably doesn't recommend you use your R21's power adapter with the R25, and we wouldn't do that, right? From there, you're gonna do basically what you would do with any other wheelbase. You're gonna make sure pit house is set up correctly, make sure your firmware and software are all up to date, any drivers that need to be updated are done. You're probably gonna have to reboot your machine once you get it set up, and I recommend running the R25 calibration setup, even if it doesn't recommend that you do so, just so that you get optimal performance from your wheelbase. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump out of sim for a second. We're gonna break the fourth wall and we're gonna jump into MOZA Pit House. So we're gonna pull up my MOZA R25 settings just to take a quick look at it. I won't go into too much detail about what each of the settings do. If you want more detailed insight into what each of those settings are and what they do, how they function and how they affect your wheelbase, feel free to check out channels like Boosted Media. They have tons of information on each and every single setting in MOZA's Pit House. So taking a look at the homepage, you can see most of my settings are pretty normal. I've got the wheel set to 900 degrees. I do that because that is the basic default setting for most racing sims, and I almost invariably allow the racing sim in and of itself, whether it be Richard Burns Rally or Assetto Corsa or Automobilista or whatever may have you, I allow that to also control the wheel settings. So it can set it whether it be a 540 degree or a 1800 degree rotation. I allow the sim to set that automatically, so I don't even really worry about it. I set the force feedback all the way to 100%, and I'll talk about that here in a second because I know that sounds contradictory to what I said earlier about running your wheelbase at 8 to 10 or 12%. So jumping over to the actual wheelbase settings, you can see that everything here is pretty much at default. Like I said, I set the default to 900 degrees steering angle. Like I said, that's just the default in pretty much every single sim. I allow Pit House to synchronize with the actual racing sim in and of itself. And then over here under handling feel, you can see we've got the game force intensity set to 100%. That's the actual force feedback that's going to be given to you from Pit House and allowed from the sim. Now I want to jump into that for a second here because earlier I said something about 8 to 10%. The TLDR of that is when you tell Pit House to set your force feedback to 100%, you're saying, hey, give me 100% of what's capable from the sim. The same thing is to be said when you go into the actual settings of something like AC's Content Manager or RBR's force feedback controls. You could set that to something like 100%, and that says the same thing. Give me 100% of what the sim is actually able to feed through the wheel. That way you could go in car by car and say, turn that down to 10%, turn that down to 8%, turn that down to 12%, depending on the vehicle. And that way, instead of getting 100% of 12%, you're getting 12% of 100%. I know it sounds similar, but it's not, trust me. Moving down to professional game force feedback intensity, I've always left that at 100%. I've never changed it from there. I don't even really know what that does, to be honest with you. Boosted Media probably does, but you know what? Put it to 100%, leave it there, you'll be just fine. For maximum torque output, I set that to the full as well. Give me 25 Newton meters capable at all times. You'll have some sims that are capable of delivering slightly more torque at a peak than what you actually have the force feedback set to. Richard Burns Rally is a prime example. You may set the in-game to something like 10, 15, 20%. But when you hit something like a rut in the road, or you drive over a sidewalk, or you run over a tree branch, the game will actually send slightly more torque to the wheel to let you know, hey, you've done something incorrect, and the wheel is trying to snatch out of your hand. And that's similar to what happens in real life. Driving your car around, you may get 2, 3, maybe even 5 Newton meters of torque through the wheel at any point in time. But if you dip your wheel down into like a gutter, for example, or you drive through a rut in the ground, you'll feel the wheel try to rip out of your hands as you're actually driving along. I set force feedback reversal to 0 for the most part. If there needs to be force feedback inversion, I do that in sim. My maximum wheel speed I set to 100%. Basically, if the car's gonna do something where the gyroscopic forces want to realign the wheels, just like you have in real life, I want the wheel to be able to keep up with that. So skipping ahead to hands-off protection, this is where I tend to differ. I do not run hands-off protection. Never have, never will. And honestly, after watching Boosted Performance's video on how the hands-off protection in the recent firmware editions has caused some bugs and glitches within the steering, I probably never will in the future at all. I mean, look, I'm a 41-year-old male, I'm a US Marine, and I'm a bit of a gym rat. If I didn't think I can handle 25 Newton meters of torque, I wouldn't buy the wheelbase. I personally don't need hands-off protection. If you feel like you need hands-off protection, whether because you're buying this wheelbase for someone who's younger, or because you have maybe weaker muscle control, or you're just not quite capable of handling when the wheelbase loses its mind, then by all means, enable hands-off protection. Me personally, I'm not running it because I do a lot of drifting and a lot of rally driving, and what that requires you to do is to let go of the wheel and let the car self-align. In those instances, you don't want the wheelbase stopping that rotation because that will cause the car to not do what you're expecting it to do, not behave as it would in true to life scenarios. And at the very bottom of this, you can see we just set the performance output to full. Again, give me everything this thing is capable of. If you're gonna spend, you know, $600, $700, $800, $900, sometimes even $1,000 on a wheelbase, you want it to be able to do every single thing you paid for. Come over here to the force feedback equalizer. I set this so that all high frequency effects are pretty much at 0. Because typically you're not gonna feel vibrations through your steering wheel, and if you do, they're not gonna be very high frequency. Even if you're driving over something like an airport runway with a ton of drainage ruts in it, you're not gonna feel 1,000 hertz coming through the steering wheel. So I set all of those down to 0, and I let all the low frequency effects come through. So that's when you're running over bumps and, you know, hitting up on the curb, but you're hitting just that little bit. You're not actually feeling the individual grooves because, again, you wouldn't really feel that through the steering wheel. You'd feel that more through the chassis. And again, I have things like SimHub running tactile transducers to actually give you that. My base FFB curve is set to linear. I want the car to behave 100% true to life. I don't want to force it to steer faster or quicker outside of what it would normally do. If the car has very quick steering, I want it to give me the very quick steering that the car has. If the car has very slow steering, I want it to give me very slow steering that the car has. I want to feel how muddy or sharp the actual vehicle is based off of what the sim is telling my force feedback to do, not because I force it to do that. And here under miscellaneous, you can see there's really not much going on, but there is one cool thing that I do want to showcase here. It's the startup music. I was hoping you'd ask. So that's how they all sound, and I personally like number 5, so I leave it there, even though I rarely turn my wheelbase off, so I only hear it whenever the power goes out or I unplug stuff to move things around. To be fair, they're about even in construction and seriousness. I was a little disappointed to see that I couldn't use the MOZA front mount plate without modification, but I'm sure MOZA's already thought of that and there's already working on something to be used with these new wheelbases. If not, MOZA, please, we really do appreciate those front mount systems for our wheelbases, especially those of us with their stock system. Looking at the R21 V2 and the R25 Ultra side by side, you can see it's literally a case of you versus the guy they tell you not to worry about. The R25 is more compact in almost every way, which I'll leave up to you to determine if that's a good thing or a bad thing. However, just because it's smaller doesn't mean it's less capable. The construction is solid and stout. In fact, even though this wheelbase is considerably more compact than the R21 V2, it still outweighs the R21 by a decent margin. Not that weight is everything, but it does go to show that the build quality still warrants top marks. A really cool thing to note, even though most people will never notice this at all, like not even a little bit, is that the unloaded cogging feel of the R25 Ultra is considerably smoother than that of the outgoing R21 V2. With the wheelbases unplugged, you can feel the individual steps in the R21 V2, especially when doing a side-by-side with the R25 Ultra. Now, look, this is barely noticeable. Seriously, you will not notice this at all. I had to take my headphones off to show you this is not noticeable at all unless you're really trying. Like, you have to be going back and forth with the cogging at wildly different speeds, something that you're just never going to notice in real life. And when they're powered on, they're equally as smooth. However, just because you won't notice it doesn't mean it's not there. And What does that mean, actually? Well, it means that MOZA didn't just take the guts out of the R21, slap it in the R25 with some capacitors, and then overdrive the motor. It shows that there are actually new guts inside of this thing powering the new R25 Ultra and probably the R21 Ultra as well. This means MOZA actually cares about the end user experience, and they're not going to charge you out the butt to make sure that you get an amazing experience every time you set foot in sim. So what does all that boil down to? When all the dust settles, what does this mean for you, the consumer? It means you get more detailed, quicker, and more defined, and with higher tactility. As mentioned before, I don't use any in-sim or pit house effects. I pretty much just want to know what the front wheels are doing. This is something called rack force. I just want to know what the tires are experiencing at any given time through my steering wheel. I mean, literally, if the tires aren't experiencing it, I don't want to know about it. Even with all those systems off, this wheel still delivers tons of detail. Just like my real-life Miata or my IRL track cars, not only can I tell that I ran over a cigarette butt, I can tell what brand it was, whether it was menthol or regular, and just how much of it was smoked before it was discarded. This wheelbase is that phenomenal. On top of that, if the simulator supports it and the vehicle you're driving is well programmed, you're going to notice subtle things. This wheelbase is capable of decoding so much information that you can tell nuanced differences between individual cars. Not only how well they steer off of center, but how numb they may feel due to power steering, or how sharp they may feel due to a manual rack versus an unpowered power steering rack. I cannot express with words just how awesome that is when you can feel the differences from car to car without having to go in and mess with settings and force it to be there. It really does let you know the difference between something like an EK Civic Type R and a Porsche Cayenne Turbo. We truly are in the golden age of sim racing. Yeah, that's a lot. Even coming from the R21, you wind up having to reframe your approach to driving and calibration of the force feedback. If all you do is hook this up, put the pit house settings in that I've shown you, and hop into your favorite sim, you're gonna wind up being flipped over like Hong Kong Phooey trying to do a high jump kick. Once again, this is not a toy. It may take you a few laps, it may take a few hours, but you will have to take some time to truly get used to what this wheelbase is capable of delivering, and depending on the wheelbase you're coming from, it may take longer than that. Like I mentioned a bunch of times already, I came to this wheelbase from the R21 V2, and even with only 4 Newton meters separating the two wheelbases, I still found myself caught out when I would expect a certain amount of feedback and I got considerably more. It truly makes me feel like this wheel is capable of more than the 25 Newton meters of constant torque, as if the peak torque is actually closer to something like 30 or 32 Newton meters. So what do you think? Do you think the R25 Ultra is worth your investment? If you do, head on over to simmotion.com and pre-order yours today. And no worries if you're not quite ready to commit, just hit that notify me when available button and we'll shoot you an email letting you know when it's ready for you to order. While you're browsing, don't forget to check out MOZA's website as well. Show them some love and let them know that you support the companies that support Inside Sim Racing. And I know I'm asking a lot, but one more thing. Check out our Discord, link in the description down below. Join us there, have some fun, post your rig, talk about the videos. Inside Sim Racing is nothing without its community. And now comes time for something I want to start doing at the end of all of my videos, an Inside Sim Racing video recommendation. This is where I recommend another ISR video for you to check out after this one. And since we're talking about MOZA today, let's go to Jake's video on the MOZA CS Pro. I've watched it like 5 times already because I really am thinking about getting that because I want to add that to my wheel lineup. I can never have enough wheels. Anyway, if you've made it this far into the video, you're a true VIP. Once again, my name is Dave Adams. This is Inside Sim Racing, and we'll see you guys next time.